Hello and welcome to another episode of Pastorn and Polarna. As you hear, we are speaking English today, and that is because we have a special guest with us. We have Crystal Jacinta from the Netherlands. But before we go ahead to the topic of today, maybe you can please introduce yourself to us, because I know you, but other people might not.
Yeah, definitely. My name is Crystal. I am 30 years old and I live in the Netherlands. I was brought up in the Netherlands and on a tiny island in Curacao, which is just above the coast in Venezuela. And I was brought up in the Adventist church, and I'm still very active in youth work. I studied nursing in the Netherlands, and then I went to Newbold and I studied theology. That's where I know Anton. After studying theology, I worked for church for 2 years as a pastor. And then I got diagnosed with severe depression and a burnout last August. And that made me really think about life. And I kind of changed the course of my whole life. So I'm now not working for church anymore, but I just started a new job as a guardian for asylum seekers in the Netherlands who are here alone without their parents. Um, so yeah, that's a bit about me. And yeah, and I have a cat. I don't think the cat will be happy without me mentioning that I have a cat. So yeah, that's me.
Okay, and we know each other, as you said, from Newbold College in England, where we studied theology
Yeah.
at Newbold. So there you go. And today we are going to talk about an interesting topic, namely about shame. And shame in and of itself could be shameful to talk about, really,
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
But why we want to speak about this topic, and because you have an interest in this topic also. So what do we mean when we talk about shame? You have any examples so we can kind of like know what we're talking about?
Yeah, I mean, when we talk about shame, there's sometimes you say something or you do something, you think, well, this might not be the best thing that I did or said. But shame is like this very, very deep emotion. And I think the best way to explain it is when um, we make mistakes as human beings and we fail. You make a mistake and you fail. But when you feel shame, it's not only about, hey, I feel I failed and I'm human. No, you internalize it and you say, I'm a failure, right? So it becomes something yeah, people feel so shameful and so bad about it, and they feel like they're not enough anymore because of that feeling. And I have a lot of examples and my own examples. um, One of them is that I spend quite some time finishing my degrees, both nursing and theology. So I started theology and it was a lot. It was so much. I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my upbringing, about church. It was so overwhelming that it took way more years than I had in mind. And just seeing people getting their degrees and having like amazing um, uh, just grades was a lot. I felt so much shame. And at the same time, I also knew that I had to give myself a bit more mercy in it, right? Because I was working, I had like 3 jobs to be able to provide for the school and for the living. But I was so ashamed because of that. So that was one thing I carried a lot of shame for. And because I maybe you understand this, Anton, but I was working like 3 jobs and studying full time, but I still had no money, right? Like I was super, super broke. So I remember one time I had enough money to go to like a cousin of mine who was very pregnant, my dearest cousin, and she was to have her first baby. And we were in the Primark, and Primark is not the best store, and it's also not very expensive. But I had no money to like buy something for my first nephew, and that I was so ashamed for that. And yeah, that's one thing. having problems with money. I was very ashamed about that. And then the most recent thing that I was very ashamed of was, as I said, I took so long to finish theology, but I went on and I made it. I made it in the end. And then I got really, really sick. And then I couldn't do the job anymore. I had to come to terms to, hey, you worked for this so hard. And not just me. Like, I had friends and family and teachers that went all the way for me, that supported me. And then I had to tell all of them that I'm not going to continue with this job, with this work anymore. And in the beginning, I had so much shame because of that. Um, so yeah, that's why I'm very passionate about this too, because I carry a lot of weight and responsibility on my back. And I figured if I have that, I'm pretty sure other people have that too.
Yeah, that's true. So you were talking about career, for example, that you say, and when you have to stop that or do something.
Yeah.
We talk about money, which is also very shameful in our society to talk about. We talk about money, but we might not share our financial situation.
How broke we are. We never say that. Or how much a house that we or the fact that we can't buy houses, or that sometimes you really need to think, oh, how do I get to the end of this month? And it's not just money or careers, it's a lot of things. It's relationships, it's how people look. We can be ashamed for so many different things. And it's very interesting, but there's also two different cultures, right? So the Dutch culture is very, very very on your own. So you have responsibility for yourself. Dutch kids are brought up, yeah,
Individualistics.
Dutch kids are brought up. I think Swedish kids and Swedish culture is kind of the same. They're very much about themselves. But Curacao, where I'm brought up, is very Latin based. So it's very you care about family. You have this responsibility for other people. So I was also brought up with, if I do something, I don't only shame myself, but I also shame my family, or I shame my mother. So you have this responsibility on your back that's way big. So I also know a lot of people that carry this for many, many, many years. So yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So why do we have to talk about this? And I mean, especially from the Christian perspective, because we are Christians and we talk about it. And what like why do we have to do this?
Because, well, shame is such a strong emotion. It makes people feel so horrible about themselves. And it makes people feel like they're flawed. And I can only talk from my own experience, but when I was going through all of this shame, what really happened to me was that I kind of I took steps back from people that really loved me. I alienated myself because I kind of felt, well, I don't necessarily deserve friendship or love anymore, right? And I think that when that happens, when shame makes people do this, they feel so very much alone. They feel alone, and there's no sense of community. And why this is important to talk about as Christians is that I feel that one of the biggest messages from the New Testament is about community. And Jesus came to change the very strange ideas that these people had about community. And that's why I think we need to talk about it as Christians. We need to give people platforms to be able to talk about their shame and talk about what they're feeling, talk about what they're going through. Because I think, Anton, that you can understand when you can relate to moments that community helped you, that there were moments that you didn't know how to go on, and that there was a friend or a family member or someone who loves you that goes, hey, Anton, I know you can do this. I've had moments like that, right? That I think, oh, I don't know where I'm going to get strength. And community helps you go on. So when you're so ashamed and you take steps back from your community, I think I think that's such a shame. I think that's such a sad thing that people go through by themselves. And I think that's why it's very important for us to talk about this as Christians, to,
Yeah,
yeah, to change this.
and also to, I see what you mean. And when you when you start to talk about it, it takes a while before you do, but when you do open up or share with someone, maybe not even a whole group, but one or two person,
Yeah.
it's very liberating.
Yeah, it's very, very liberating. And um it's maybe very, very straight to say this, maybe also very Dutch, but in the end, if we don't talk about this, shame can kill people. People can be so ashamed of things that they alienate themselves, that are so lonely, and that they start asking themselves, what's the point of life, right? So
And you even have physical consequences,
yeah,
not even, you
yes,
might be sick or whatever.
people will get sick, people self-harm because of it, people might die because of it. And yeah, that's why we need to talk about it. It's very important.
All right. And in this podcast, we usually also try to have something related to the Bible about what we're talking about. So, you have any like verses or examples from the Bible about this? I know you wrote your, was it master thesis about something
Yeah,
similar, or can you
yeah,
explain?
correct. I don't have a specific Bible verse, but yeah, I wrote my thesis. I wrote it about Jesus and emotions, and my question was, is Jesus a manly man? So it wasn't really about shame. But what I saw in my research is that Greco-Roman culture, people had to be very stoic, very much in charge of their emotions, very much powerful, and being the ones that do things to other people, right? Being the ones that have strength, or have something to say about other people. But in all of this, be very, very much in charge of who you are and what you feel. And I look at two stories in the Bible where Jesus kind of loses it, which is very strange for men in that time. So at the temple, he flips tables and he gets really mad, something that just unacceptable. And in that story, you see, I argue that he did that because the people in charge at that moment, they were using business and they were selling things. And because of that, people, the normal people, did not have access to the temple anymore to come and worship. And because of that, they shamed people into going away, not being able to buy offerings for worship. So they shamed people away. And Jesus sees this and he gets so very mad because by doing that, they stop the people from having a connection with God, what was very important at the time to have that in the temple. So that's one of the things I write about in my thesis. And the second story I write about is Jesus and his friend Lazarus, because it says that Jesus was he was a friend of the family, and then he goes. He takes a while to get to Lazarus, and when he gets there, he's too late, and Jesus cries. Also, just not what is expected of men in that time, because they were supposed to keep all of that emotion in. And so it's not a specific Bible verse, but what I've learned from my thesis is that Jesus, by being who he was, by being completely who he was, he changed the narrative um, of what was expected in that culture at that time. And he changed.
And then you mean that we can follow that
Exactly. Yeah, definitely.
way?
We are kind of called to follow that example, because I don't know how it is in Sweden, but in the Netherlands, it's also very strange to put all of your emotions out there and be vulnerable. We walk around with all of that very close to our hearts, and I think if as Christians we see what Jesus did, we can follow in that example, and um, well, also create that that for other people, create that space.
Interesting. Yes. And it's very relevant, like the outcome of your research is very hands-on, relevant also to what we're talking about. So how do you now suggest that we can do and talk about this topic, like from now on? Like we talk about it here, yes, but any suggestions like how we can be better for this in our daily lives?
Yeah, definitely. As you said, talk about it. That's the first thing. By saying things out loud, things get less taboo, less shameful. By saying, do you know what? I was super broke when I was a student, or I'm still struggling to get by every month. Other people might think, oh, well, this is something that we can talk about. And I think as leaders and you guys as pastors, you need to create safe spaces where people can explore strong emotions like shame. And also, it's very important to realize that people, they might go to church once or twice a week. But next to going to church once or twice a week, people have whole lives where they're struggling with stuff, where they are dealing with addictions, struggling with shame, struggling with money, with relationships, with how they look, with what people might have done to them. And we as leaders, you as pastors, need to create safe spaces where we can talk about this without being bullied or judged or vilified. And I don't know, there's different ways. It really depends on the community that you are in, how you can do this. But you can start by talking about it in house groups. You can find folders from different people that can help outside of church. You can encourage people to find help and professional help outside of church, because I do think that pastors and people in church are really great help. But there's also professional help out there that's specialized in many different things. And I think we need to be open to encourage people to use that too.
Yeah, set an example yourself by talking about it from your own perspective, which might, then encourage someone. Okay, I'm carrying this. I'm just about to say to people, because I've been there myself. I'm thinking like, is this something I can tell someone?
Yeah.
And then you go and think about it for a long time yourself first, and then, okay, can I talk to someone about it? And when I did, or when someone does, that opens a whole new way of dealing with it.
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's one of the most wholesome things that can happen to you also, where you are vulnerable to someone and people have already struggled or given space to vulnerability in their own lives, and they can catch you when you share that with share your struggles with them, and people go, oh really, tell me more, how can I help you? I think it's one of the best things that can happen to someone, because they feel seen. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, if we can start to wrap up now. We have I think we have a few more minutes, but we can wrap up by because we also like to have some kind of practical takeaway from what we talk about. So maybe we can do that, and you can share about your you have an interesting project going on.
Yeah, I have a really interesting project. I just launched my website. It's called Crystal Clarion, and I'm sure that you guys can put it in the description so people can find it. But it's a website in Dutch and in English where people can write down their shame. And on my website, I call shame turtles, because I feel that people have been carrying these shameful things, or these very heavy turtles on their back. So I created a website where you can go and share your turtle and not have to carry it by yourself anymore. And from the stories that I get, I make tiny pictures and I put them on my Instagram, and I put them on my website on a page called See, where you can leave, you can let the turtles go. And with that, I hope that people don't have to carry it by themselves anymore. It's anonymous, so I don't know who sent in what. So yeah, I hope this also facilitates that people talk about things and start to share things and create safe spaces for people to be able to do this.
Yeah, I think we have a few more minutes here. Maybe this is like outside the script now, but maybe you can share some stories you heard, because I also know that you worked on receiving phone calls from, was it like emergency young people or something like
Oh
that?
yeah, I was a volunteer for Samaritans, which Samaritans is a organization in the UK. If you are at any place or in at a train, you will find stickers with Samaritans and their phone numbers on it, and it's a suicide prevention line. Well, it's not necessarily prevention line, but if people are feeling alone or they want to end their life, they can call Samaritans, and Samaritans, you're trained to listen to people and to talk to people. And I did that for a while. And well,
Maybe you have some, like, from the top of your head, some interesting stories, because this is also related to shame. I know this is outside the script we have, but
yeah, I need to kind of think about it quickly. But you hear a lot of things. You
and
one
just to say, we have the similar stuff here in Sweden also, like you can call for suicide prevention. We have kids can call a number, BRIS, for example, and this kind of places. So it's, but that was just in the UK.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
did it.
I remember I talked to a lady once, and I talked to her for like 2 or 3 hours, and she was so she was sitting at home, and she was desperate because she was married to a man that she was very, very much in love with, but he had addictions all over the place, and she took out loans. She took out many loans to be able to like placate all of his addictions and all of the money that he lost. And she was in so much debt, and she called me saying, do you know what, we have a house, we had money, but now we don't have anything, and there's people coming for me, the bank wants to take my house. And um, I talked to this lady for hours, and I don't know, I think working at the Samaritans, you learn that everybody has something that they're dealing with, whether it's really big or really, really small. Everybody deals with something. And yeah, though that thing I talked to a grandma who lost, who her daughter had a her daughter and her husband, they were in a fatal car crash, and they left their kids behind, and she became the mother of these grandchildren, and she was taking care of them. And she calls and says, you know what, it's such a hard thing because I see my daughter who died in them. um, and then she feels the shame because it's a hard thing. So it's stories all over the place. It's stories all over the place, but yeah, everybody deals with something and carries something with
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
So what are you now, as you wrap up your final words, your conclusion, and your takeaway here?
My takeaway, be kind. Yeah, definitely be kind to people because everybody carries something. Create safe spaces. As Christians, follow Jesus' example. Create safe spaces where people can talk about shame, in your house, in your community, and yeah, just be kind to other people. Definitely.
Okay. I think that's it for our conversation now. Thank you for being a guest here in English, and we we will post your website there, so everyone who listens can go there and see, throw some turtles.
Yeah, drop them. Yeah, definitely.
And yeah, thank you for being part. See you around next time. Bye bye.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.